Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Bonita from Bonita Doodles. At last I hear you cry. The shoes are finally on YouTube with a voiceover so you can have a go and do these yourself. Specially done for the Classique launch for Spectrum Noir, I can finally go through exactly how I made these trainers and the techniques that I used to get them looking as real as I possibly could. And first of all, in true Bonita style, I did forget to press the record button after I'd done most of the first trainer. So apologies for that, but it will soon catch up with regards to the techniques and what we need to do when we come on to do the second shoe, because it's pretty much the same thing as we did with the first one, just different colours, that's all it is. And I just wanted to go through the various colours that we used, as there are quite a few of them. The first one that we used was the blue grey one, which is BGR1, blue grey 3, BGR3, ice grey 2, 3, 6, 8, which is IG2, IG3, IG6, IG8, can you see a pattern there? Burgundy DR7 and Poppy DR2, cocktail pink PP6, dark blue TB8, Caribbean AB3, peacock blue BT6, I used a lot of pens in this, apple AG1, avocado CG4, almost done, fern grey AG5, dusty purple DP3, pink violet PV3, amethyst LV3, vintage pink AP3. Whoop whoop, we got there. Yeah, there was a lot of pens used, but I wanted to make them rainbow toned, so I originally found the picture in Pexels and I just took it into Photoshop and added one of my backing papers I made a few years back and applied it over the top as a layer so I could change the colour of the trainers. Somebody asked me the other day how I got the white on the trainers, and the simple answer to that is you leave it as negative space. So anything that needed to stay white, I just didn't colour anything on the paper and I just used my greys to create the shadows. The reason why I use a lot of colours in this is because I needed to keep some of the tonal range the same, the hues the same, but be able to create the shadows, and sometimes just putting in the grey to create the shadows wasn't cutting it, so I ended up having to use colours like the burgundy, like the poppy, to really get in there and create some shadows on top. Please be aware that if you have a go at this, if you layer too many of your lighter colours over the top, you will desaturate your drawing, and by that I mean that your ink will, apologies by the way if you can hear the washing machine going, it is on and I forgot to shut the door. So yeah, you'll desaturate your paper, meaning that you'll draw out the colour that you've already put down, so just bear that in mind if you are layering a lot of colours. I wasn't sure whether to upload this as a standalone tutorial, but it actually took me several hours to get this finished, and I thought no one's going to sit through there and watch the whole thing because I'm not going to remember what I did. This was some time ago now I did these. We're probably looking at, oh gosh, maybe 3 months ago now. You know, we always do them plenty of time before the products get launched, so I had great fun making these. They were so much fun to draw, and I must admit at one point I did think to myself they're not actually looking like trainers, especially this back bit I'm working on now. I thought it's just looking a bit of a mess, but it wasn't until you completed the whole thing and you got the feel of it all that actually it sort of came together. With the shoelaces, if you're going to have a go, make sure that you do keep them white and try and work on them, not necessarily last, but certainly at the ender part of your drawing, because it's easier to get everything else worked out around it. As I say, leave it as negative space and then you can work on it. A lot of the greys, the ice greys, blue greys were used. I think I did use some of the blues as well on the shoelace, and some of the green as well. It's just a case of observing your reference really and making sure that you get everything in there correctly. But I wanted to make sure that it had this really pretty rainbow shoe effect, so a lot of blending went on. And I know I've mentioned this in previous videos, but if you are new to my channel, one of the biggest mistakes people make when they use alcohol markers is they layer once and expect it to have this beautiful blend. It just doesn't work like that. Get all your base tones down, get all your base hues down and block it all out, fair enough, but I can layer over the same area several times, I mean literally several times, because you need to get that transitional blend nice and smooth, and the only way you are going to do that is by layering, because your alcohol needs to saturate your paper, and that aids the ink to travel across your paper into the other area where your colour is, so it really does help it feather out and blend together. A lot of people discard these types of pens because they have the chisel tip, but I love using the chisel tip, especially for large filling areas, and the fine tip is plenty to give you the coverage that you need for the smaller areas, and you can get even finer detail if you turn your chisel upside down and use the very top of your chisel. You can get some really fine bits of detail down, so don't discredit them just because they don't have a brush nib. Those of you that are familiar but not 100% sure, or even brand new to the Spectrum Noir colouring system, there is a video which I will link at the end of this one which explains the difference between the markers. Now the classics aren't involved in this video because I did it before I was allowed to mention that these were launched, but the system is exactly the same, as in the pens are the same, the formula's the same. They've got these new beautiful Japanese nibs, which means that they last, and yeah, they're just crazy good, so it's worth a watch. I'll pop that at the end for you. When you create shadows in markers, it can be a little bit intimidating, but the biggest bit of advice I can say is just go for it. Yes, it's frustrating if you do all this beautiful work and then all of a sudden you decide, uh-oh, I've not done it well enough now. But what you can do is, what I did there was I put down a bit of a red first, and that was to check how dark I needed to go against the rest of the colours, and you can't always gauge that until things are up and next to it. So bear that in mind if you're going to do it. Maybe just do it with a darker colour but not really dark. And try to avoid using black in shadows as well, because it's very unrealistic. Shadows generally grab colours that are around, same with your highlights, so try and avoid black if you can. If you want to get it really dark, try mixing a green and a blue, or a brown and a blue, and that will give you a really dark shadow without having to reach for your black pen immediately. So there was, as I say, an awful lot of blending that went into these shoes, and I did go over certain layers because once the alcohol dries, it can tend to dry a bit lighter, so it looks quite dark when you put it down, but then it just dries a bit lighter once the alcohol has disintegrated off, for the lack of a better way of describing it. So quite a lot of layering went on in the shadows because, as with anybody that uses markers, you do worry that you're going to go in too dark too quickly. There were some shadows that I knew I had to go in dark straight away, but there were others which I just wanted to play it safe really and gradually build those up. Don't discount ever using your blender as well. On the toe there I did use a blending pen, or the Spectrum Noir blending pen, just to try and blend out the grey towards the white, so it was a much more smoother transition. It can really help to give you a smoother flow when you're getting, especially when you're sort of trying to draw a shadow on a white object. So it's a really good tool to use for doing that blend out. I used it a little bit on the shoelaces as well, again just to blend out. It doesn't take your colour away completely, but it gives you a smooth enough blend between your shadow and your white that it looks much more natural than it would if you were just to leave it as a block colour. That's what really aids if you're trying to reach realism with these types of pens, and I think that's what I love about them the most, is they are open to any type of user. If you're an illustrator, if you're a graphic designer, if you're a fashion designer, if you're a crafter, or even if you just do colouring in books, it really doesn't matter. They made these tools to suit every single market, and that's what I love about them. So yeah, just give them a whirl. You know, you certainly don't have to buy the whole kit and caboodle if you just want to give a few colours a go. It really is great, and you don't need as many colours as you think you need because you can blend colours together. It's just a case of having a play with them really, but if you're like me and you're a bit of a sucker for having a collection, then of course, like Pokemon, you've got to have them all. So yeah, it's easy for us to say. I did use an art liner just to do put my teeth back in to do the stitching. Originally I thought about using a white pen, but I wanted to keep this purely Spectrum Noir products, and I thought the black stitching actually looked quite nice. I had a lot more control over it using their art liners as well, because they have a real good range of colours in between it all, if that makes sense. So not colours at all, that's not what I meant. I actually meant thickness of the nibs. So you have a really good range. So I think I used the 001 to do the stitching, and the art liners work incredibly well with the alcohol markers because they are water resistant and they are alcohol resistant. So you can colour over them, paint over them, and they won't budge. I just added little dots of colour here and there, or shadow here and there, to get that surrounding around the shoelaces with regards to the metal. Somebody said something to me a while ago, and it's, although I knew that that was the case, it hadn't actually sunk in until I had another go at doing it. Things look a real mess when we look up close, because, you know, we're looking up close and we can see all the detail and the information that's gone into the drawing. But in reality, we don't look at things that close. We generally look at them, you know, 2 or 3 feet away. So when you're looking at these things from a distance, they look absolutely fine. When you look at them up close, it's a whole different story. And yeah, they can look a little bit messy, but you know, that's not the issue. The issue is what it looks like when you have some distance. So if you're going to be having a go at these things, just make sure you look back every now and then. Taking photographs is actually a really good way of judging how it looks. The colour and system and way that I did it, you know, I can't really go through in depth as such. There are a couple of tutorials coming up which didn't take me long, and I will be running them as full-time tutorials. There'll be no time lapse in them. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell for all to make sure that you get notified when these videos go up, because there's I think there's 2 or 3 that will be going up as real-time tutorials. So that way, although I may not be talking over the whole thing because you'll get bored of listening to me, you will be able to see the exact method and the colour that I use and how I get them down and how I do the blending without having to watch them at warp speed. So keep an eye out for those. I'll be releasing roughly 1 a week over the next few weeks. So yeah, just keep your eye out, and I'd love to know what you think of these. If you ever have a go, certainly let me know as well. It'd be interesting to see your interpretation of doing this type of drawing with your markers. So yeah, have fun with it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you guys on the next one.